There comes a moment, quiet, subtle, when the noise of the world begins to fade, and in that silence, you finally hear it. The voice you've ignored for years, the one that belongs to you, not the parent, not the partner, not the professional, just you. At 50, life no longer asks you to prove anything. It invites you to return, to pause, to breathe, to remember who you were, before the world told you who to be. This is not the end. This is the beginning of something far more honest. Welcome to the season of living true. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing no one tells you. When people talk about change, they speak of it like a storm, loud, sudden, undeniable. But sometimes it arrives more quietly, not like thunder, more like a whisper under the skin, like something gently pulling at the seams of your life until one day you realize you don't recognize the person in the mirror anymore. It started for me on an ordinary Tuesday. I was brushing my teeth, the morning light falling across the bathroom tiles just like it had for years. Same routine, same face, but something felt different. I stared at my reflection, and for the first time in decades, I saw someone I didn't truly know. He looked tired, but not just physically. There was a weariness in the eyes that came from carrying too many roles for too long. Father, spouse, provider, problem solver, peacemaker, worker, strong one. So many titles, so many masks. But beneath all of them, who was I? I remembered a time when I had dreams, ones not shaped by duty or necessity, but by wonder. There was a version of me who used to wake up with fire in his chest, not because he had to do something, but because he wanted to. That version felt like a stranger now. It wasn't one big event that shook me awake. It was a series of small cracks, like the day my daughter moved out and I stood in the empty hallway longer than I should have. Like the moment a friend I hadn't seen in years said, "You've changed. You used to laugh more." Like the quiet Sunday mornings that no longer felt restful, just empty. One crack, then another, until I could feel it. My life, as I had built it, no longer fit the person I was becoming. For so long, I thought being responsible meant silencing myself, pushing down my needs, sacrificing without complaint. And maybe, for a time, that was necessary. Maybe survival required that kind of strength. But now, with the kids grown, with the career slowing, with more years behind me than ahead, a new question began to rise. If I'm not living for others anymore, who am I living for? There was a discomfort in that question, a quiet ache, because I realized something that shook me more than any crisis could. I had spent so much of my life performing roles, I had forgotten how to just be me. And maybe I never truly knew what me meant. They don't tell you this about getting older, that it's not just about wrinkles or gray hair or physical slowing down. Sometimes the biggest shift happens inside. When the soul starts to ask questions you've spent decades ignoring. Questions like, what do I want? What do I believe in now? What brings me joy? Not pride, not status, joy. And if this were the second half of my life, how would I want to live it? That morning, as I stood by the mirror, I didn't have the answers. But I had something else. Something I hadn't had in a long time. A stillness. And inside that stillness, a gentle stirring. The beginning of something. Not a midlife crisis. Not a breakdown. But perhaps the beginning of a breakthrough. A crack in the shell I had lived in for so long. And through that crack, light was beginning to seep in. No one really prepares you for what happens after the cracks appear. They speak of transformation as though it's a sudden enlightenment. But they rarely mention the ache that comes first. The quiet unraveling, the disorientation. Because once the surface begins to crack, you can no longer go back to sleep. You start to feel things you've ignored for years. Regrets you buried, dreams you dismissed, feelings you numbed just to get through the day. And the hardest part? There's no one else to blame now. No deadlines to hide behind, no young children to care for, no boss demanding your energy. Just you. And the silence you've spent a lifetime avoiding. At first, it felt like standing in an empty house. Everything familiar had been moved out, the busyness, the expectations, the constant doing. And now, in the quiet of that empty space, I was alone with someone I hadn't truly met in years. Myself. I started waking up earlier, not because I had to, but because I couldn't sleep. The quiet hours before dawn became a kind of mirror, and in that mirror, I began to see the truth. I had lived a life that was good, productive, respected. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself what I loved. I started remembering strange, beautiful things. How much I used to love painting, the sound of rain when I wasn't rushing out the door, how free I felt walking barefoot through grass as a child. Where had all of that gone? There was pain in remembering, pain in realizing how often I'd told myself, now's not the time. You have responsibilities. That's just a silly dream. And over time, all those not nows became never. Not because anyone told me I wasn't allowed, but because I believed I wasn't worthy of choosing myself. Some mornings I would sit by the window with a cup of coffee and feel an ache in my chest that I couldn't quite name. It wasn't sadness, it wasn't fear, it was the quiet grief of all the versions of me I had abandoned. The artist, the dreamer, the one who used to believe that life could be more than routine. And once I saw them, I couldn't unsee them. There were moments when I cried, not loudly, not dramatically, but the kind of tears that come when you finally stop pretending, the kind that fall without permission, the kind that taste like truth. And still, despite the discomfort, despite the disorientation, something in me kept whispering, keep going, keep looking. You're almost home. But the journey inward is not fast. There are no shortcuts. It is a long, quiet walk through the corridors of your own soul. Some days I felt raw, others I felt like giving up and just slipping back into the life I knew. It would have been easier to be who everyone expected, easier to smile on cue, easier to carry the weight of roles that no longer fit than to carry the uncertainty of becoming someone new. But something had changed, and once the soul wakes up, it cannot go back to sleep. I realized that this pain wasn't a punishment. It was a cleansing, like rain washing away years of dust, like light shining into rooms I had kept locked. The pain wasn't here to hurt me. It was here to free me. It was the price of coming back to myself. And though it hurt, it was the most honest pain I had ever felt. Because this time, it didn't come from losing someone else. It came from finally choosing me. It didn't happen all at once. The healing, the clarity, the coming home to myself. It came slowly, like morning light seeping through the curtains after a long night. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, real. Some days I still felt unsure, but the pain had softened. The questions no longer haunted me. They guided me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. I felt quietly alive. You see, I stopped chasing things that didn't feel like me anymore. I stopped saying yes out of guilt. I stopped performing out of habit. I started asking myself, not what do people need from me, but what does my soul need from me? The answers weren't always clear, but they were honest. I began to create space for what mattered, not the loud things, but the deep things, like sitting in silence without needing to fill it, like writing again, just for the joy of it, like calling an old friend not to fix anything, but simply to say, I was thinking of you. There is a quiet kind of freedom in turning 50. You've seen enough of life to stop pretending. You've failed enough to let go of perfection. And you've lost enough to know what's truly worth keeping. You no longer need to prove anything. You just want to feel true. I started listening to the wind in the trees, to my own breath, to the voice inside me that had been whispering for years. Live softly, live deeply, live real. There's a kind of richness that no paycheck can buy. It's in the way a simple cup of tea tastes when you're no longer in a rush. It's in the smile of a grandchild, the touch of a partner's hand, the quiet knowing that you are enough, not because of what you do, but because of who you are, when you are just being. This, I've learned, is the sacred gift of this season. Not speed, not status, but soul. It's the ability to walk slowly through your days, to say no without apology, to love without conditions, and to stand in front of the mirror. Not to fix anything, but to finally say, "There you are. I remember you. Welcome back." Now, when people ask me what I do, I smile and say, I'm learning to live, not perform, not achieve, not endure, but live, deeply, honestly, simply. Some people may never understand this shift. They may think I've slowed down. They may say I've changed, and they'd be right, because now I don't live to meet expectations. I live to feel aligned, to breathe more fully, to love more gently, to be more present. This is not retirement. This is not stepping back. This is stepping into the life I was always meant to live once I had the courage to listen. So if you're standing at the edge of 50 and you feel the stirrings inside you, don't ignore them. That restlessness, it's your spirit trying to speak. That quiet sadness, it's the cost of being disconnected from yourself. And that sudden longing, it's the beginning of your return. You are not too late. You are not too old. You are not done. You are just now arriving at the most honest chapter of your life. Welcome home. If this story touched something inside you, if it reminded you of who you are or who you're becoming, then I invite you, gently, to stay on this path with me. Subscribe to the channel. Not just to follow, but to walk together. Because this journey, back to ourselves, is one we don't have to take alone. So when you're ready, I'll be here. And so will the stories. Until next time, take care of your spirit. And remember, you're right on time.